and where we started and where we are today, and just sort of what the collaborative's all about, really. And Johnny's going to keep an eye on the chat for me, so please do ask any questions and we'll go through them at the end. So I think it's always really important when we talk about Notch to sort of discover where we started. And what we really started with was a motivated trainee up in Leeds in 2017, who was bored of doing single centre personal audits to sort of complete his training requirements, and thought very, very broadly about what we could do about that, and actually felt very strongly that bringing trainees together as a team and actually doing collaborative research where we were doing real world audit to start with, but everybody joining together across the region, across the sort of the country eventually, would allow us to be much more productive, have much higher impact of these audits that we were doing, and actually mean we could turn what was single centre audit into real world research. And that was really the vision in 2017. But we extended that a little bit more and actually sort of thought about what it was that we wanted to do in terms of, if we formed a collaborative, what would that look like? And I think we have three main aims, really. One is still remains very strongly to be about research and research output, and that really is sort of the centre, sort of the cornerstone of our collaborative. However, there were two other things. So building a trainee community, particularly around the delivery and understanding of research within oncology, was a really important thing, and also trying to support people who weren't yet trainees in oncology but were hoping to become so, and how research might feature in their progression from the get-go. And our ideal really is that every trainee will be a member of Notch at some point in their training, to sort of feed into that community and gain a sense of community that we don't necessarily have at the moment. And there are lots of oncology trainee communities, and I think one of the things Notch has done is sort of brought those all together, really, rather than anything else. It's not aiming to replace anything, but really more give that community a feature, but particularly focused on the sort of experience of research. And that kind of feeds in the education angle that there's this sort of concern that there isn't enough research regarding education in oncology. We're a very research heavy profession. We rely heavily on evidence-based medicine, and we deliver more trials than any other group of professions, but we don't necessarily get a lot of training, particularly if you're not part of an academic track. So we really wanted to have an educational element to that, which is why today is so great, because it's really our first educational output, which is really nice to have got to and to have realised, which is fabulous. And so we started with these 5 and then very quickly 6 centres in the north of England, trying to realise that ambition of building a collaborative where we could do joined up research. And then we had a very rapid year trying to understand what that looked like in a bit more detail. So we realised that the core of all this is enthusiastic, motivated trainees, and that remains true to this day. You know, we are built on the fact that everybody really wants to do this, and it's considered to be a good and useful thing, and can give transferable skills, a sense of community, a sense of friendship across multiple centres, but also then have outputs for your career and give you high impact research. So it has lots of benefits, and I think that really appeals and has appealed to trainees, and we want that to continue to be the case and to expand even further. We also realised that we needed some framework and some structure, so we developed our standard operating procedures very early on, so that actually we had a governance structure, we had a process by which to work. We had a structure that worked, that could expand if we were going to expand in terms of the collaborative. And then we got down to the nitty-gritty of actually developing some research aims. So we had our first call for proposals in early 2018, and very early recognised that we probably had 2 areas that Notch could fill that weren't being filled by other collaboratives, trainee collaboratives or otherwise. And I think that comes down very much to the fact that oncology is very tumour-based normally. So we identify ourselves as a breast oncologist or a gynae oncologist. We are very, very tumour-driven. And so actually the advantage of Notch was that you could do cross-cutting, sort of potentially acute, but pan-tumour questions that weren't necessarily being answered because of the site-specific nature of our profession. But also that we had this phenomenal ability to potentially answer questions about rare tumours and rare questions. That meant that we needed more people than a single centre or a group of regional centres to be able to answer questions about predominantly about incidents, but also about management and differential management across the UK. So that's where we honed down and really recognised that Notch fulfilled those two criteria: one for rare tumours and rare issues, and one for pan-tumour, possibly acute broad issues. And it was really important, I think, for us to have recognised that, because we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We want to make sure that we're fulfilling a need rather than something that's already been done by somebody else. So I think it was quite important that we did that, and we did that fairly early on. And then we developed those projects that we selected in 2018 and sort of made our presence known at the NCRI conference that year. And we went on to deliver these two projects. So we very much in line with our thinking, we had a project led by Abigail Galt up in Newcastle, looking at thymoma and thymic carcinoma, a very rare malignancy, which hasn't got that much data in terms of how these malignancies are managed. And then we also looked and I proposed an immune-related adverse events project, which I led out of Liverpool to all of the centres that were involved in Notch at the time. I think this is really nice. So one of the things we showed, so we did the thymoma project, and we collected one of the biggest data sets available for thymoma and thymic carcinoma. And we did that for the 6 centres that were initially interested and involved in Notch. Very quickly we realised that actually this was something that was appealing to other people, and actually we needed to think about how we were going to expand. And between the thymoma project being undertaken and the immune-related adverse events one, actually we had more centres get in touch with us and say, actually we're really interested in getting involved in this. These are issues that we want to look at ourselves, but actually we'd like to join into a much bigger audit. So that's what we did. So we undertook this project was in 12 centres. We managed to collect data for over 2,000 patients across 3 tumour groups, and we were starting to be able to answer bigger questions. So real world incidents, we could compare toxicities to existing trial data, look at the variety of treatment, and also look at the burden of immune-related adverse events, so, the impact on acute oncology provision. So we were starting to be able to ask bigger questions because we had more data and more centres involved. Then we realised we probably needed to think about how we were perceived by the profession. That was really important to us, and actually wanted to become an entity that was recognised and that people could write on their CV and people go, oh yeah, we know what that is, actually have that kind of recognition of delivery. So we approached the RCR and the ACP initially to consider endorsing and sort of buying into the concept of Notch. And they were really positive about its existence. They were very embracing of the concept of Notch, and very happy to support us. So we became an affiliate of the RCR and we became endorsed by the ACP in 2019, which has been really phenomenal. And actually we have a Notch member that sits on the RCR academic committee, and we also have a Notch member that sits on the ACP trainees committee. So we like to, and we think it's really important to feed into our professional bodies and actually make sure that there isn't, that we can fill a gap and understand what those bodies want to do and what we can do, and actually how we can be synergistic together, and hopefully also bring all those communities together so that we have a trainee community across oncology specialties that is a network across the UK. And so then we went to the UK Oncology Forum in 2019, and I think we were very flattered to be asked, and we're very grateful to Professor Plummer for extending the invitation to Notch. And we were given one of the sort of breakout rooms before the Oncology Forum to have our AGM, and that was a real turning point. I don't think we really realised at that time that it was going to be such a turning point, but sort of June last year was really when Notch genuinely became national. We'd had a few people interested, and we really wanted to expand, but actually that seemed to be the galvanising force. So this is the group that attended the UK Oncology Forum, where we set up a very exciting Mexican wave that has been since been recapitulated by many others. But we were sad not to be able to do it this year from a virtual perspective. But actually people started getting interested, and we really looked to expand our network at that point, and we became the National Oncology Trainee Collaboration for Healthcare Research, and we've not really looked back. So we changed our structure somewhat at that point. Not necessarily, we didn't reduce anything, but we needed to make sure that the structure would work for a bigger group of individuals, basically, which was a really good issue to have. So we now have a structure that looks very much like this. We had always had an advisory group. We'd always had a senior clinician within each centre that was involved, that formed sort of an advisory group, and then we had a core 2 or 3 senior clinicians who sort of advised us from a sort of a strategy perspective. But we felt very strongly that we needed to create a proper advisory group, and I'll go through who's in that membership in a moment. But essentially, they're a group of incredibly engaged and keen to be involved senior clinicians that allow that sort of support us in terms of advising us in terms of our projects, and also inviting us in terms of strategy and funding and support. And we couldn't do what we do without them. So that we're really grateful that they exist, and they're also really important from a governance perspective to make sure that we have got senior involvement and gain and can take experience from all of their sort of their wealth of experience, to make sure that we can avoid as many problems as we can, and make sure that our processes work as well as they possibly can. Then in terms of the way that the trainee bit works, we have a trainee board which has got a combination of these people. So it has regional reps, it has project leads, it has a leadership group made up of the exec, and then it has an administrative element to it. And our regions are currently broken up like this. So we have membership from all 4 nations of the UK. We have a Scottish rep, a Welsh rep, and a Northern Ireland rep. And then we have 4 English reps representing different parts of the UK. And that allows us to make sure that we've got good communication with our centres on the ground. So this is what the board is made up of. So there is currently these positions on the Notch board. So we have an education and events coordinator, which obviously is Johnny at the moment. We have a chair, which is myself, a vice chair, who is currently Caroline Dobson. We have regional reps, as I've described, a secretary, a treasurer, and a comms lead. And it's worth really mentioning that the whole point of Notch is to be completely oncology integrative. So we want it to be medical oncologists and clinical oncologists working together, and always to be that way. So we actually have it so that the chair and the vice chair are either a medical or clinical, and vice versa. So we never have 2 of the same specialty in our executive positions, and also they cannot be from the same geographical region. So we really want to make sure that it remains very inclusive across the whole of the oncology sphere, and also as geographically inclusive as it possibly can. Our advisory committee feeds into that, and essentially our past chair becomes the lead of the advisory committee, the coordinator of the advisory committee. And then the way that it works down on the ground is that each centre has lead registrars. Depending on the size of centre, it's flexible. So if you're a smaller centre and you only have a small number of registrars, then normally speaking we would ask for 1 medical oncology registrar and 1 clinical oncology registrar. If you're a bigger centre, then we normally suggest that you have 2 of each, so that you have enough registrars, so it's not a big burden to carry. And then within that, you also have local senior advisors. And then we always really encourage there to be anybody involved in data collection. So that can be more junior trainees, that can be other registrars who aren't leading in that centre, and it can be other non-trainees. So physicians associates, pharmacists, for example. All of these people are very welcome to get involved in Notch. We're a very integrative collaborative that really wants to encourage oncology research and encourage that community as much as possible. And then what, generally speaking, is the centre will have a lead registrar who then feeds into the regional rep, so that essentially we have this sort of umbrella network where the regional rep has contact with each of the centres, and then that kind of information about projects, etc., just propagates down through that process. And then within that, the final very important group that feed into that are the project leads, who essentially give the board an update. And the board meets once a month virtually, and then we aim to meet face to face twice a year, but obviously that's been a bit challenging this year. But the project leads feed in and let us know where things are up to, and sort of give a constant sort of update. And that means that projects don't get lost and things continue to move forward, as there's a constant sort of feedback loop for it. This is our current advisory board membership. So as you can see, we again have regional reps, and we also have reps from important organisations, so CTRAD, NCRI, RCR, RCP, ACP. Are all represented within there, so we know that we're having the right conversations with the right people, and making sure that we've got people at hand if we need their advice, and they've been phenomenal and been really supportive of us so far. So we can't thank them enough. So does it work? Does the collaborative work? Does the concept work? And I think the best way of illustrating this is it most definitely does, and it has been ever increasingly impactful. So this was our first poster presentation from the thymoma work that Dr. Galt did, and obviously it was presented at the Bristol Thoracic Oncology Group BTOG earlier in the year, and actually won the first poster prize. So actually showing that our results can have impact and will be taken up by many. And we followed that on with our immune-related adverse events work, which was presented at ASCO this year. So that again got international recognition and visibility, which was really fantastic. It is worth saying that both those projects are currently with manuscripts underway, and the thymoma manuscript is due to be submitted in the next couple of weeks, and the immune-related adverse ones hopefully not that far behind. So we want to get visibility. We think, you know, we want to make sure that there's presentation of our work, but also we're very much keen for publication as well. So with that in mind, we've got a hive of activity going on at the moment, and some of these projects have been delayed in starting because of COVID, but actually things have been happening despite that. And I want to extend my thanks to everybody involved with the Notch so far, because keeping this collaborative going during an international pandemic has been quite a feat, but it has indeed been continued. So just to introduce you to the projects that we've been doing at the moment. So Helen Dearden up in Leeds is coordinating our first ever prospective study looking at frailty assessment and scoring in oncology patients. So that's actually gone through full ethics approval and is currently under consideration by the ethics committee. So that's a really exciting thing. It means that we've gone just from doing retrospective audit work into prospective work, which is a fantastic move forward and something that we had as an ambition right back at the start. There's an acute oncology service provision project coordinated by myself and Mark Baxter, who's due to be our vice chair this coming year. And that project was not a big data collection project. It was a snapshot project that has already given some output into a collaboration with the ACP, RCP and RCR, but there will be some further work specifically from Notch coming out of that in the nearest future. We wanted to look at academic training in oncology. So Dan Hughes and Chris Jones are looking at sort of a questionnaire and evaluation of academic training so far and what people's experience of it is to help infer our next sort of educational plans. And then we have a management of meningioma project, which was launched just in September. So if anybody wants to get involved in that, then please do let us know. And that's led by our due-to-be chair, Caroline, up in Newcastle. So again, trying to move those projects forward despite the current environment. And then just recently at the Oncology Forum this year, we chose our next project, which is going to be the credit study, which is cancer-related escalation decisions for ITU, which is led by Rachel Marshall, who sits in Sheffield. And so you can see we've got a whole breadth of things. People can get involved in stuff that appeals to them. They don't have to be involved in everything, but actually it means that we can start sort of appealing to people's own research interests, and also sort of make sure that it's career beneficial for those that get involved. The other thing is that obviously there are different things that you can do within Notch. So if you're an academic track career researcher, actually getting involved at the board and understanding the requirements of being a PI/CI is something that's really available and possible through Notch. If you're just new to research and you just want to get involved in working in a collaborative setting, then just being involved in your local setting and getting projects off the ground and doing data collection is also completely possible. So there's a whole variety of things that Notch can bring, and you can do within Notch depending on what your own personal interests are and personal experiences within research. So it's a very pluripotent collaborative that increasingly registrars are joining and understanding that and hopefully finding good benefit from being part of it. We do really want to work collaboratively, and I think it's really important that we recognise that collaborative working is both internal to Notch and also external to it. So we've been involved in a number of different studies and also helped raise the profile of other studies that are going on, because I think that's really important. And we're a member of the National Research Collaborative, which is a relatively new organisation, and we sit on the board of, which essentially is trying to bring all collaboratives together, of which there are many across the different specialties, although many fewer within oncology itself. But across all specialties, there are many national collaboratives, and actually trying to bring them together under one umbrella to get collaborative research recognised as a more significant entity, gain funding and infrastructure. So we're part of that as Notch as well. And we've had some outputs which have been really good. You know, we were invited to do an editorial for clinical oncology. And that was really nice for a number of reasons. One was actually, it was really good to put down on paper what we'd done and what the journey had been so far. But also it was really, really useful because it got visibility for Notch, not just in the UK, but outside of it. And we were approached by this group, the Radon Journal Club, which is a UK-US collaborative, to do an online journal club for a journal sort of Twitter meeting, which was probably the most intense 48 hours of my life, where they just kept asking questions about Notch. But it was fantastic and really raised the profile of it, but also really made us think about how you could take our concept and shift it into a different country, and that global requirement, and what different challenges would be faced by a US audience compared to a UK one. It was really, really interesting. So much so that we have decided to have our own Notch Twitter journal club, which will be starting at the end of this year. So please do keep an eye out for that. We're also changing our leadership. So obviously, as any collaborative would do, we roll our leadership and change it on an annual basis. So Caroline Dobson will be taking over from me as chair in November, so next month. And she is a clinical oncologist based up in Newcastle. And Mark Baxter will take over as vice chair, and he's a med-onc based up in Scotland. And I will take over the lead of the advisory board. And Christopher Jones, who is the trainee who started all of this, will continue to be involved in Notch. Whether I don't think he'll ever not be involved, which is exactly as we'd want it. We have got a whole new board for this year, but we are still looking for a couple of board members. So if anybody's interested, an education and events coordinator. Johnny's done a phenomenal job this year of putting this symposium together, and we'd very much like to continue that and move things forward and have more events. And we're also looking for a Wales representative as well. The other thing to say is, because we are such an expanding collaborative, we are looking for deputy regional leaders. So if anybody's interested, please do get in contact with your regional representative and consider taking that role. It's a way of getting involved in the sort of the senior leadership of that process. All that's left for me to say is,
sorry about this. I'm just having a bit of difficulty muting Ruth. Ruth Robinson. Oh. Ruth, if you could just mute. Great, thank you. Sorry about that, Anna. Carry on.
That's all right. No, that was just that was perfect timing. So it's just all that's left for me to say is to thank you for everybody that's been involved in Notch so far. As I said, I think the pandemic has been very challenging for so many reasons, but I think the fact that Notch has continued to meet and to move things forward during it is really testament to the collaborative strength. Thank you to our senior advisory board, and also just to say, we're really looking forward to this year. We've got some really exciting things coming up over this next year of work, and hopefully a few more Notch first and some outputs. Really just illustrating how we can be when we work together towards that collective aim. And I don't think training should ever be underestimated, and I think Notch is true testament to that. So also, if you wish to join the community and you're not already a member of Notch, you can do that through our website, and you can just join up to be a member, and you'll receive our newsletters and various bits and pieces like that. If there's any questions, I'd be very happy to take them.